go ahead and start. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. On a weeknight, it's hard. You got a lot of things going on. I'm Michelle Lowry. I'm the director at Liberated Children's House. Prior to going into administration, I was a toddler guide and then went into NIDO. And tonight I'm going to share with you some strategies to support their cognitive and social emotional development. I'm going to focus on the 0 to around 12 months to walking till the toddler age. Firstly, it's important to understand that infants are constantly learning from their environment. Therefore, creating a nurturing and stimulating environment is essential for the development. One of the key aspects of the Montessori pedagogy is the importance of observation. We consider ourselves scientists. I consider my NIDO my laboratory. And I'm constantly gauging and observing the children and the elements within that to see what they need and how I can change the environment. I'm part of the environment for that. As guides, we observe them. By doing this, we create an environment that is tailored for their individual needs. So I just had a few images. I was going to take photos, but I like the illustration. The illustration doesn't give the clutter of all the regular stuff in life and gives a simple demonstration of how it just slightly changes throughout their different occupations. And how you can aid that is really by preparing yourself and preparing the environment for their needs at that stage. So with this one, you can see we use a floor bed in our environments. You can do so as well. The reason why we do floor beds is it removes the visual obstruction, so it frees that up. It's also for freedom of movement. Universally, children rotate while they're sleeping. This allows for that freedom of movement and autonomy as well. We're going to have the feeding area. There's the feeding area is right there with a chair. That's a place for the mom to feed the child. We keep it calm. Mom has everything that she needs while she's feeding the child. There's the area for changing or care of self. And so a lot of it's going to be a start for them at first. And then the area over there is the area for movement. It has the mirror, little mobile there. In terms of cognitive development, it's important to provide the infants with materials that appeal to their senses. Infants are attracted to objects and colorful and have different textures and that make noise. And we can provide them materials such as rattles, soft toys, and mobiles that will help them explore their senses. We call them psychosensory materials, but they're objects to help stimulate those senses that helps them throughout their life. Maria Montessori's quote is, the most important period of life is not the age of universal studies, but the first period from birth to age 6. 90% of neurological construction is complete before around age 5, and most of that's happening between the 0 to 3 stage. Their autonomy, their self-esteem is all being hardwired and pre-programmed. And it's their, I think it's nature and nurture. We're predisposed to be protagonistic or antagonistic or shy or gregarious. And then it's our environment that will either exacerbate it or subside it. And so we can observe the child and where they're at developmentally. What's that next stage and how can I help them through that? So I thought it'd be easier just to demonstrate with my little model here. So for, we're talking a lot about movement. How do you support that with a child? It's really removing the obstacles. We don't have any containment devices. Everything's secure, everything's baby-proofed, everything they're allowed to touch. And that's sending a signal and a message to them too that we trust them and that this place is for them. And that's not often found in our regular lives. They have to deal with like regular tables and chairs and stuff. It can be very difficult. So for like small things you can do for a child who's crawling and they're just in that beginning stage is I might take the toy, place it maybe just out of their reach. This is going to let them bat at it and have a little bit of struggle. Autonomy and self-esteem, a lot of that is overcoming an obstacle. I think as a parent, I know for sure that I constantly have to reevaluate my opinion of a correction or mistake. Because as parents, we want to protect our children. We don't want them to make mistakes. But it's through that process of overcoming them, when we allow it to happen just naturally, that they have that self-esteem. But it's observing, knowing how much is enough. doing those lessons, those small demonstrations, allowing this child to struggle just a little bit without aiding them. And not also giving it to them right away if they're struggling, but also not putting it too far away. Other things that you can do for sleeping, you can leave it there too, because we're right there. The area for it changes now. This is a period from 6 months to 12 months. And so things that have changed is they're no longer having the mobiles, because they're now mobile. They're physically mobile. The mobiles that you see in the environment were all to stimulate senses. She was talking about like her favorite work, and I was like, what's one of my favorites that I would take in case there was a fire? And it is something simple, a bell and a rivet. One of my favorite things that I saw that really made me believe in certain things and aspects was objectification. The moment a child changes the world, where they move something. Very simple string with a bell on it. You can hang it from anything. We use the elastic that you put into buttons. Hang it from one of these hooks right here. You see this focus as they're looking at it hanging in front of them. And that moment they hit it, and they're like, oh, yes, you moved something. You changed the world. You're now moving. And that goes back to that attachment and separation. If we allow for this freedom of movement and for them to have this autonomy, it helps. As they're learning the process of movement, myelization is the thickening of the dendrites, and that happens inward, outward, head down. So other things that we help and support independence is in the toileting. So we know a child by the time that they can crawl on their knees, that their sphincter muscle is myelinized. And so if we go through, I guess the non-Montessori term for toileting would be toilet elimination communication, then we're sending them the message that this function is done here. So we do that all the way from 6 months for introducing them into underwear. That's giving them the feeling of the wetness, that positive biofeedback of the wetness, and it allows us to be really responsive. We'll use a thicker underwear, so it's not making so much of a mess. It also is not obstructive from the cloth diapers or paper diapers. So it allows them to have that process that they're starting to learn how to toilet. And as they're standing up, we're having them participate in it. And we're using language. Language is another big part of their acquisition at this time. And it's the way we use the language for infants. It's called parentese, so not necessarily baby talking, but we all have like an inclination to do inflections, like, oh, you're just so cute. That's natural. It's going to entice their interest. It's when we make different words for them that's not necessary. Like, do you want your baba? This is your bottle. I'm going to feed you your bottle. Respecting them and their place, communicating to them when you're going to touch them, touching when you're giving them a bath, making sure you're touching your hands and your arms, your ears, and using anatomically correct words for their body parts as well. I'm cleaning your penis or wiping your anus. These are just words. It's no different than another body part, and giving them that accurate language is going to help them in so many different areas identify and collaborate. I'm going to change your diaper and I'm going to set you down. We call it broadcasting. I'm saying what I'm going to do before I do it. We're going to change your diaper. Left strap, right strap. All through this process, I'm letting them know what happens. By the time they're 9 months, they're understanding thousands of words. And they're very capable when you start giving them language lessons or even lessons on practical life. So, peeling apart the steps, that's what a Montessori lesson is. So she's talking about table washing. That's a movement work, it's sequential. So when we're even, when they're about 9 to 10 months, we're introducing them to soft shoes so they can move. And I'm peeling apart the layers of what that means, helping them to be independent. It's a collaboration with them. So like, this is my shoe. I'm gonna use my thumb to take off my shoe. There's 28 steps. I've broken it down to taking off a shoe. That's a lot for them. And so if we slow down what we're doing for them and giving them the time to practice doing things by themselves as they grow, then that can be really helpful. So as the infants grow, they can be more interested in different manipulatives. So different puzzles, blocks, stacking toys help develop these problem-solving skills as well. So if a child's stacking blocks, any kind of stacking cups will work, or it's important to let them experiment with it, show them how to do it, but when they're doing it, not necessarily correct them, pull back. I'm like, oh, did that fit? Just gotta play with it.
So Michelle, it seems like a lot of what happens during this stage, it really depends on the adult being prepared and the environment being prepared.
Yes.
Thank you, this was lovely. I'm glad to hear it back.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dulce Fiscal. I am a toddler teacher at Lumen Bachman Lake Community School, and today I'm going to talk to you about 4 different things. I'm going to talk about the developmental characteristics of the child from 18 to 36 months. I'm going to talk about how to promote self-regulation and independence. I'm going to give you tips on how you can modify your home environment. And lastly, I'm going to give you some parenting strategies that you can use at home to collaborate or work with your child. So let's jump right in. The developmental characteristics of young children are that they are sensorial learners, and it begins with the gustatory sense. You can see young children putting things in their mouth. And then as myelination occurs from the upper to the lower parts of the body and the inner to the outer extremities of the body, children begin to use all of their senses, but especially the tactile and vestibular system. So children are learning about the external world by working with their hands and by moving freely in any environment that they come in contact with. They're so focused. It's all about me, me, me. It's not easy for young children to share. But they're also gregarious. They're interested in human behavior and they want to imitate human behavior. If you live with a child between the ages of 18 to 36 months, you probably notice that they follow you around for some time until they're able to work on their own. And this is because they're very interested in what is it like to be a human. Now let's talk about promoting self-regulation and independence. Children have functional independence. This means that they are eager and they're capable to engage in activities of daily living. And these are simple activities such as feeding themselves, toileting, dressing and undressing. And let me tell you that dressing and undressing is a big part of a toddler's life. They're learning how to use their muscles, they're learning to balance, they're learning to use equilibrium, to develop self-confidence and trust in the world. Now I'm going to give you some tips on how you can modify the home environment. The home is the most important and influential environment in a child's life, and it needs to be modified as children develop and their needs change. It can be divided into 4 different areas. It can be a bedroom, it can be an area of the home where people spend the most time in, such as the living room. It doesn't matter how big or small, they can all be divided into these 4 areas. So let's jump into the first area, which is the area for feeding. And if you look on the screen, you'll just see some examples, and I'll tell you about those. You can use a high chair or a child-sized table and chair. And you have to know that children cannot yet wait for long periods of time. So I highly recommend a high chair, as you can see on the left side, top of the screen, where children can get on and off independently. They're also learning about how their body functions. When am I full? When am I hungry? So that's part of independence. We want to consider the child's physical abilities to experience success. We want to offer child-sized silverware and dishes. We want to have towels or a sponge available for spills. And let me tell you, it's going to be messy, but we need to let go of the cleanliness, and we need to understand that children are developing hand and eye coordination abilities. You also want to cut food into small sizes so children can be successful in picking up the food with their silverware. There are also foods that children can handle successfully that you could offer to them in your home for snack, such as peeling clementines or peeling and cutting a banana, maybe even spreading cream cheese or preserves on a cracker. And there are tools that you can buy on Amazon or Montessori services that children can use efficiently and are good for their age. As you can see above on the right side of the screen, there's a few tools there that you can find. Now let's talk about the second area, the area for physical care. This area, you'll need a low chair or a stool. You'll need a shoehorn so children can independently or with collaboration put on their shoes. You'll need a wall mirror, and the wall mirror provides the child with body information, such as when their clothes are on backwards or when maybe they're a little bit crooked. You can invite them to the mirror and show them. You'll need some type of container or storage to offer limited choices of clothing that are weather appropriate, because children want to have freedom of choice. You'll want to have some type of container for dirty clothes. And you'll want to have a low toilet or a child-sized toilet seat or stool that the child can use to reach the toilet. Now let me give you some tips for dressing and undressing. Number 1, the child needs to be able to sit comfortably. Unlike adults, they can't undress and dress while standing up. Number 2, they need to take off one item at a time. Number 3, everything must have a place. When they take off their shoes, are they going to put them under the chair? Are they going to put them on the shoe bench? When they take off their socks, are they going to put them inside of their shoes, or are they going to put them in a laundry basket? Number 4, we're going to show the child how to use their thumb to separate the pants from the underwear or the diaper. And we're going to show them how to pull it down and pull them up. Number 5, when undressing, we want to show the child to take their arms out of the sleeves first and then the head. And when dressing, we want to show children how to find the tags. And we want to show them to, for example, a shirt, to find the tag on the shirt, lay it upside down with the tag facing up where the child can put on their head and then their arms. And with the pants, you'll want to put the tag facing down and lay it on the floor as well, where they can hold it with their thumbs and put in one leg at a time. Now let's talk about the third area, the area for sleeping. You'll need a floor mattress, or you can put the mattress on a platform, but it shouldn't be any higher than 8 centimeters off the ground. This allows the child to develop their proprioceptive sense. There's the system, and this is a critical component for the child to develop awareness of their body position in space, where my body begins and where it ends. I suggest that you do not have any toys or stuffed animals or pictures on the wall. We want this to be a minimalistic space so that the child can associate through their brain that this space is just a space for sleeping. But the child might need an item for security, and that's okay. It can be one blanket, it can be one book, or it can be one stuffed animal. Now let's talk about the fourth area, the area for play. You'll need a shelf, some type of shelf attached to the wall. You'll want to limit the number of activities available on the shelf. It could be 4 to 6 toys, and you'll want to rotate those toys as the child loses interest. And the pro about having this available for the child is that they internalize a sequence of steps, right? Beginning, middle, and end. First, I choose my activity. Then I play with it. Then I return it. This allows the child to develop a sense of confidence. Now, I'm going to give you a few parenting strategies. Offer choices. As I gave you a few examples, this can be in clothing, activities, or food. You want to collaborate with your child and offer the minimal amount of help. For example, I'll help you put on your left shoe. You can help me put on your right shoe. Create routines and be consistent. You can choose which routines you want to implement. Don't overwhelm yourself. It can be maybe feeding or undressing and dressing, and you'll want to follow the same steps every time. Because something else about children between 18 to 36 months is they don't like surprises. They need order and predictability. They want to be able to know what's coming up next. And that's all I have for you. I actually have something that I want to show you for the area for feeding is this placemat. This is a cloth placemat that you can use for feeding, but you can also find different types of placemats online. It has a space for the plate, the cup, the fork, and the spoon. And I have some examples of child-size dishes. This is a ceramic plate. We want to introduce child to real life objects. And if it breaks, they understand the consequences of cause and effect. Here is a pitcher. child-sized pitcher. It's actually a creamer. Well, this one doesn't have a space for the pitcher, but you can also use a child-sized cup, and this is actually a candle holder that you can find at stores. I have a child-sized spoon and a child-sized fork. And here is a napkin, so the child can wipe themselves. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Can you see the chart? Okay. Is the writing big enough? No? Okay. I'll just explain it. Okay, my name is Sharad Baxnad, and I am from Montessori Children's House and School. I've been there for about more than 10 years. And there was a little bit of a communication snafu, and I thought my presentation had to be pretty theoretical. And but what I think you're looking for is practical suggestions. But nevertheless, I think by looking at this triangle here, the child, the adult, and the environment, we understand something of the dynamic of the Montessori dynamic, which leads us to the substantial or the indirect approach to guiding the child. Usually we construe assisting the child as a direct process. You know, it's you, the child, it's the teacher, the child. But in the Montessori method, you have a third factor here, the environment, and it's the environment that needs to be developed, it needs to be imagined, it needs to be conceptualized, it needs to be designed, it needs to be created, and then you have to implement certain practices in the environment. Now, Dr. Montessori talks about self-construction. So what exactly does she mean by that? She relates self-construction to what happens in the prenatal stage. In the prenatal stage, the child was a passive recipient of nourishment. In the postnatal stage, the child needs to be active, but the child is still in a sort of embryonic development. The muscular system is incomplete, the skeletal system is incomplete, the nervous system is incomplete, and the child is called upon to do a series of activities led by the intelligence, by the child's ability to choose, and then using the child's sensory motor arc. The child needs to do these in order to actively construct himself or herself. And here, there's a wonderful essay called The Unready by Alice Meynell. And she talks about how the child is unready and incomplete. And that's the picture of the child that we have in the first phase of development, 0 to 6 years of age. And the adult, we the adult, as a parent or as teacher, we must acquire a certain knowledge, a technical knowledge perhaps, or general knowledge of the child in the embryonic phase of development. So it's important that we know, and for that we have to read. And we have to develop a love depending on our perception of the powers of the child. So the powers, the tasks, the potentialities of the child are unbounded and great. And it is based on this that we have to develop our love for the child. And then we have to guide and assist the child in this process of self-completion. So that's what these two triangles mean here. Okay. Now, I know that you're looking for a lot of practical advice. And so just to kind of launch it off, I have to say that in a child's activity towards independence, there are 3 stages. There is the processive stage, in which the children are interested in the process. So if they are doing a certain activity, sweeping perhaps, they tend to sweep the floor, pour the things out, sweep the floor again, pour it out, sweep. They're engaged in self-construction, but they are in the process. So that kind of indicates to you what kind of environment you must design for that particular child. And then they become purposive at a certain stage, which is they go from being just merely pouring, folding, dropping, picking up, things like that particular stage. They go on to the purposive stage where they become aware of a criteria of perfection, of points of interest, of the inhibition of movement, of the control of movement. They want to achieve a concrete and a definite, immediate aim. So that's developmentally a little more sophisticated, and then they go from there to being purposeful. At this stage, the child is wholly conceptual. They can plan. They think of a remote end or an ultimate end, and then they think of many intermediate ends that they have to achieve in order to achieve that ultimate end. So there is an aspect of not just doing the exercise, but of planning and implementing a set of tasks in order to achieve an ultimate task. And that is when the child is purposeful. And in this context, we can talk about children as being disciplined by activity that they do. So discipline is not something that's imposed from outside, it's a result of their own activities. So that's what we mean by discipline. Obedience from children can only be acquired if both the adult and the child are emotionally aligned together. What do I mean by that? Now, the parent and the child must recognize that the child's fundamental task is one of self-construction. And if that is so, then there could be an interplay between the adult and the child, which would result in the child's being fulfilled, emotionally fulfilled, and then the child is ready to obey. So there are 3 stages of obedience. In the final stage, they are ready, willing, and eager to obey. So if the obedience is something that you're looking for, discipline is something that you're looking for, if you're looking for the child to be responsible, they need a certain awareness of the fulfillment of their own selves and an awareness of the larger family context in which they live. So that's important. Now, some pointers. I don't know if I can go through all of them here. That in implementing practices, there are some pointers that you have to keep in mind. Create real, not make-believe activities in the home. Show, don't tell. Ritualize your routines. Make your rules customary practices. Anticipate transitions. Signal through the senses before verbal direct instruction. Get the child's body ready just as you attempt to influence the child's mind. Follow the child's developmental imperatives, but lead an activity. Allow the child to participate meaningfully in adult activities done in his favor. Establish the manners and etiquette of your particular home, taking into consideration the powers, tasks, and potentialities of the child. Help the child grow in confidence by prepping for success. Respect the dignity of the child and all those he comes in contact with. Encourage choice by limiting the number of choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Many, and then it's too many. Step in to help the child directly only when failure tends to affect self-confidence. And then there's also, in the beginning I said show, don't tell. There's also tell, don't show. When the child is very accomplished and responsible, you just have to tell the child. You don't have to show the child. The child will do the rest. Okay, thank you.